Hi everyone, welcome to Supermum's Career Insights webinar tonight. I'm absolutely delighted to have Priscilla here, who's a solutions architect currently working for an end user in London. Priscilla, do you want to say a quick hi to everybody?
Hey everyone, thanks for joining.
No, it's fantastic to have you here, and I'm really excited about interviewing, or rather grilling you a little bit about the solutions architect role, if you like. Maybe I've
Yeah,
got maybe I've got a bit of a personal interest in this, given that I kind of, having built my Salesforce career, and got really into the different consultancy products and solutions. They then introduced like the solution architect roles, and it's like, oh, what are those? And they're like, oh, they're a bit scary. Like,
that sounds
mm,
fancy.
yeah, exactly. And you kind of always had like the technical architect, and then they introduced these other two tiers. And I suppose I've always been sat on the fence to go, well, will I be able to do those? Like, and then I learned a little bit more at Dreamforce. I went to a panel on, learned more about what the architects were, and I thought, well, actually, you know what, I do that now. But this is like the knowledge around it. It's like, we with the projects that I work on, we learn about integrating with things or data migration. I'm thinking, well, I do that, and actually, it makes sense to kind of do a qualification or do more training around how to do integration and data migration. So I think a really good, I'll obviously be getting more from you on this webinar today, but I think it's really interesting for all of the listeners to really understand, well, what will I learn throughout that process? What experience will I need to have? When will I be ready to kind of move through the tract of the architect certs, really? I think we'd love for you to share that story tonight, and how you got to where you are now. And I think the other angle for us, for Supermums, we've been going 3 years now, and we've very much focused on the admin course, which is the foundation knowledge, it's the basic skills around how the platform works, what the core products are. But we're really keen to start advancing people's knowledge beyond that, which are critical kind of skills to develop your career as a Salesforce. So we didn't want to just leave people after 6 months. We introduced the core sort of additional courses around consultancy skills and platform one skills, just because we felt that there were things to add to their bow, considering that we're working with supermums, now who've been with us for like 3 years, right? They're 2 years down the line. So Jasmine's now got 9 certifications who works for us, in our consultancy, and she was a supermum 2 years ago and one of my trainees. So it's amazing to see, yeah, how people are ambitious and developing their skills and learning everything. So tonight's webinar, for all of those listening, thank you for joining tonight. It's we're going to do this deep dive into what does a solution architect career progression look like. So Priscilla, over to
Yeah,
you. I'm now going to ask you all these insightful questions. So just give us a little bit of a
yeah.
background about, how did you find yourself in a career with Salesforce? Like, what were you doing before? And maybe just give us a bit of a view of, the overview of where you're working now.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I just thought it was interesting, like you said, oh, first we only had this certified technical architect, and now it's branched down to solutions architect, and that is so true. Like, it's two really scary words put together, I think, like technical and architect. And when you're starting your career, you're like, oh God, I'm not technical, not an architect, like I'm never going to get there. But when you break down what all the little tiers are, and you realize that sometimes as an admin, as a consultant, there's loads of architect skills that you're already putting into place, and the technical knowledge doesn't just come all at once. You learn a bit by bit, and it truly is a journey, kind of as cheesy as that sounds. You just learn one little bit at a time, so don't worry about all the things you don't know, because it's that old thing of the more I know, the more I think I don't know. Like, I think I know nothing now, but in reality I know that there's a lot that I know. If that makes sense. So
I don't,
just
yeah,
taking
so I
one
don't
thing
think
at
you
a
would have got
time.
your
Yeah.
qualification. Yeah, you wouldn't have got your qualification if you didn't
No,
know.
I know. Yeah. But it's like the more you know, the more you learn, the more you realize there is to learn, and it's just never ending. So build block by block on that knowledge that you're acquiring, and you're going to get really far. But yeah, for me, I used to be a lawyer in Brazil, and I relocated to the UK because my husband is British, and I couldn't practice law. I would have to retrain, and I didn't really want to do that because I didn't get a lot of personal satisfaction from being a lawyer. Just didn't think, I don't know, I did corporate law, so it's fun winning cases for the corporations. So it wasn't very rewarding. And when I was looking for a job here, which I had no idea what I wanted to do because my whole life, all I knew about was law. I just kind of started interview for all sorts of things, and I came across Wandera, which is it was a tiny startup at that time. I was one of the really early joiners, and they said to me at the time that as the company starts to grow, I'll grow with them. They said they'll let me try different departments, see what I really liked, and when I found something, then they would invest in me and train me on that, and take it from there. And it was really funny because when I joined, they had just bought Salesforce and immediately fell on my lap. And it was just a joke saying that I am the definition of an accidental admin. Because
you're another one. They're everywhere.
Yeah,
Is everybody an accidental admin?
I had no idea what Salesforce was, and it's just got there, they were just, oh, we could, can you log into this system and see, we need to do this and that. Can you help with that? I was like, yeah. And then Googling like mad and just learned from there. But it's really interesting and it's really exciting. And I thought, hey, you know what, I can add value here. And yeah, I've been there for almost 6.5 years now. I'm actually leaving 3 weeks, which is a bit bittersweet because they've been my London family sort of, and we've grown ridiculously amounts together. But yeah, I'm gonna go and work as a solution architect for a consultancy very soon. But yeah, that's coming.
Oh, that's really exciting. And given, that's 6 years of foundation knowledge. So you started being this accidental admin, and looking at your CV, you sort of went more into a business analyst role and solution architect. So just talk us through, when did you decide actually, I'm going to forge a career with Salesforce? When was that pivotal point, and what did you do, to really kickstart that and consolidate your confidence and your knowledge, really?
Yeah, so it just happened very organically because, as I said, I took an interest from Salesforce from basically the week I started there, and they were happy to let me run with it. And at some point, I needed to do more things than I was actually comfortable with. So they sent me to do the advanced admin course with Salesforce. So I did that. And then I think that was the first time I actually realized that I do know quite a lot because it was meant to be this advanced course. And actually, I had quite a lot of knowledge. And the things that I didn't know, because we didn't really need to use them at Wandera, and I found it really easy to pick it up. It's like, I guess I know more than this advanced thing. What's the next thing after an administrator, but I didn't really know. And I didn't know, like at that time, I think they hadn't launched Trailhead yet. There was like a knowledge base, but there wasn't very clear community. That was way before user groups. So there were meetups and stuff, but I didn't know about them. And then at one point, we were going to migrate from the Zendesk to the Service Cloud. And I knew nothing about Service Cloud, I only knew Sales Cloud. So we hired this architect that used to work in the company that the founders of Wandera had before they founded Wandera. And he had gone on to become a technical architect, and he's on the MVP Hall of Fame now and everything. So we kind of got along really well. He took me under his wing a little bit. I've learned loads on that project. I think that was my first really big Salesforce project where we had to bring external people in. But in reality, it was just me, that technical architect, and a couple of developers in-house that helped us with the data migration. And I did loads of stuff. And so that way I learned loads about the Service Cloud and best practices and everything. But he used to be one of the London user group, the London admin user group organizers back in the day. So he's like, you should come to user groups, you really like it. And at first, because I'm a little bit shy when I don't know people, and this was probably in my first 2 years or so here, and I was like, especially if this was a really big group of people that I didn't know and talking in English, and it's like, English is not my first language. So even though I can talk English and I can understand everyone, I don't know, it's just something about the ideas put me off going for a little bit. But yeah, but yeah, once I went once and met those people, and everyone is so lovely, that I thought, I could come to this, and it's once a month, so I'd really look forward to them and go as often as I could. So I kind of progressed from there, and this is an advice I would give to all of the super moms, is if you can, because I know I'm talking about London, but there are loads of user groups around the UK, or if you're listening from outside the UK, so loads of user groups all over. So have a look. And that for me was another pivotal thing. Was I would hear, you'd hear these talks, and what are the skills that you need, and what are the topics. So I realized, I'm not backing up my data, or I don't know, it's a new release. There's all these notes. I never go through all of them, and then you realize, it's really important to, because something could break and so on. So I kind of started picking up some best practices, but also really reinforced the things that I already knew.
Absolutely.
So kind of, it gave me more confidence. So the more I started to get engaged with the community, and there's not just the user groups, there's not just admins, you've got the developer user groups, you've got Einstein user groups, you've got Marketing Club, Pardo, all sorts. The Women in Tech, I cannot recommend enough if you can go to one. It's amazing because it's not necessarily anything related to Salesforce as much, but it's more about how to build confidence, how to, I don't know, do more public speaking, how to market yourself, and so on. So loads of all the surrounding skills to build your confidence to work in such a, usually male dominated environment. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to get that, definitely go to that. Kind of lost my train of thought here.
Absolutely. No, I think they're really good.
So yeah, you've got the user groups, you've got the World Tour, so London World Tour, or the World Tours, those are good. You've got the Dream event, you've got, there's some in Europe, French, whatever, you've got the Dream Olé in Barcelona, you've got all sorts, so you can go to those are amazing, but you've got one in London as well, which is London Calling, which is amazing. So that way you can learn a lot from other people, and it doesn't matter how experienced you are, but hearing other people's experience, you will learn, and you will open your mind to other ideas and how other people interpret other, so definitely do that, because you don't know what you don't know. You would only know once you hear someone that knows about it talking about it,
Absolutely. I think that's the thing about being like a sole admin. It's kind of like you can be internal, I think, and just to really reflect on those couple of points there. We've found, when we work a lot with internal admins, either it's mums that we've placed into jobs, and then as a consultancy we're supporting them in their role, or our super mums have gone into other roles where they're working alongside another consultancy. And what's so amazing about that sort of experience is it's not on their shoulders to know everything and be this whole admin, but when you've got credible consultants working alongside you, they're the ones that are responsible for kind of making sure that the solution and architecture is right, but you're there learning everything from them, so next time you know it all yourself and you can go and do it. And I think it's been such a great safe space environment, isn't it, really, where you're learning, but it's not on your shoulders. And I think the other point about user groups is really great. Like we've built the Super Mums community. We have got mums all over the country. So like we've got so a super dad's going to Bristol user group tomorrow. We've got not Bristol, sorry, Sheffield tomorrow. We've got a lady going to one of our super mums is going to the Cotswold one, then Bristol. We've got mums in Reading. Deborah runs the user group in Reading, actually. She actually runs that one now. In Brighton. And so we've got our super mums communities all over, and I think it's nice when you've got that peer support, isn't it, that you can go along to. And in our Facebook group we try and coordinate it as much as possible to kind of get them to go along together. So all really fantastic points, and hopefully we can support everybody with that much more. So let's do a deep dive on the solution architect then. So tell us what a day in the life of a solution architect is, and then if you can tell us a little bit more about the certifications that you had to take to get there and what you learned, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, now I'll get to the meaty. Yeah, so as we already covered, like I'm an in-house architect. And I've seen Wandera grow from literally no customers at all, because when I joined, we didn't have launched the product to the market yet. So I think because I've seen them grow from such an early stages, I'm very well positioned to help them now. But on a day-to-day, I would kind of communicate with the key stakeholders in the company, say our director of sales operations or our head of customer support, to understand what it is that their team is struggling with and how can I find a way to solve that challenge for them, usually leveraging Salesforce. It can be anything like building a process to automate something that's currently done manually and is taking too much time, or it could be redesigning an existing process that doesn't suit us anymore. It could be increasing visibility of something to help the decision making, and so on. So I try to understand what it is, the ideal state that we want to get to. If we could dream of the best way of dealing with something, how would we want it to work? Then I have to think about how can we achieve that, depending on the time that we have, depending on resource constraints. So some things would be amazing if they're fully automated, but then maybe the volume of transactions would be too low and we can't justify spending the time or spending the effort doing that. So kind of try to find a happy medium. Yeah, some of the things an architect has to consider is how do you build something that is scalable? So you might be building something that right now 5 people are going to use, but what if those 5 become 50? Would that still work? And what if they suddenly become 500? But is it actually ever going to become 500? So, just think about that. How do you decide whether to build something against buying from the app exchange, if that's available? What's the cost benefit of that? And then you've got to consider things like security. So who needs to have access to it? For example, if you're building a new custom object, then should all profiles be able to access it? And how about access to all the fields within that custom object? Is there any sensitive data that only specific people should see? And who's going to keep that data relevant rather than kind of let it get stale? Because you definitely don't want bad data in your system, because then your information is not reliable, and then that's going to impact on your user adoption. And what if you're giving access to third-party contracts to provide a specific service? Which subset of record do they need to see to do their job? You don't want to give too much visibility to someone that shouldn't see it. So just all of those kinds of considerations. So I think the key thing that changes or kind of differentiates an architect, it's how you need to shift your mentality from localized challenges to thinking about the wider company strategy and vision. And I think that you learn with practice. You learn by talking to the people who are making those decisions, understanding what matters to them, and it's kind of taking on board all of that when you design your solution. So actually, you're talking about Dreamforce. On this last Dreamforce, I saw a panel organized by Carrie Towson, who's also a solution architect, and she was talking about the shadow pyramid, because we've seen, or at least I've seen millions of times, that kind of pyramid design, right, where you have your application architect from one side and your system architect, and it all culminates on the CTA. But the shadow pyramid is like, what skills does an architect need? They're not just technical, because you could have all the technical knowledge and still not be an architect. So you can't put those, all of that knowledge you acquired into practice. So she was explaining how at the bottom of the, I don't know if that section is available actually to watch, but if there is, you should look into it. But kind of like at the bottom of the pyramid, you start by being able to gather requirements and challenge people on whether what they think they want is actually what they need. And then you build up to you need problem solving and critical reasoning. So you need to not only have the technical knowledge, but also how to apply that to a real life problem. And then you need to be able to prepare your artifacts and communicate your design, because it's all very well if it's all in your head, but you actually need to put that into paper and be able to talk people through that, even if you're talking to people who are not necessarily technical, people who don't know anything about Salesforce. So you need to be able to, design, create a nice process mapping, or maybe it's a system landscape that you can use as artifacts to explain to people what you're going to do and why you're doing it that way. Because just solving something effectively is not enough, because if you can't communicate it to the stakeholders, and then you go on to how do you then handle objection. So that's a skill you need to have, because those people are going to come to you and say, actually, I don't like what you design, I don't agree on that, or I don't want to spend that much money, or I don't want to spend that much time, I don't want to spend that much effort. And you need to be able to handle that. So on. So those are the more senior of an architect you become, then the more of those skills you need to be able to develop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I think it's that sort of step. It's wearing different hats, isn't it? It's like a glorified Salesforce admin, really. Your admin is, like you say, more responsive to localized needs and doing workflows and everything else. But where you get to the point where you're designing a system, and doing the business analysis and also proposing the technical solutions as well, it's kind of, it is about being a consultant in that way, isn't it, really? It's really about qualifying yourself as a consultant to be able to advise and future-proof the system. So it's certainly, that's the way that I've sort of seen it, and I've sort of implied with my senior consultants now in my team that this is the route we'll be going down, to qualify them as senior consultants, because it's all of those skills that I would expect them to be having. So just talk us through the different certifications you did as part of this pyramid for solutions architect. Can you just give us a run through what they are and what they cover in detail?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I took a very funny path, because after I started realizing that I really wanted a long-term future in Salesforce, I then started to think of where are the gaps in my knowledge. So the first certification that I took was actually the platform developer one, because I knew nothing, and I mean nothing, about coding. And I thought, if I'm going to ask Wandera to pay for certification, then I want to make sure that's something that it's going to definitely add value to me and therefore to them. So yeah, that was hard. I think I took a good 6 months preparing for that, which is longer than I took for any of the other certifications, because that was right, that's where I didn't know anything. So yeah, and I think it's one that people dread if you don't come from a technical background. As we covered, I have no technical background at all. But what you're going to learn is just open so many possibilities to you, because there's only so much that you can do with Process Builder or even with flows, and flows are really powerful. So definitely start with flows, because it's kind of like learning how to code but not really writing it. But it's kind of makes your mind start thinking that way. And by the way, I still don't code. Like, if you ask me to code something, I will eventually get there, but I'm so slow. It's definitely, no one is winning when I have to code anything. But just being able to write a little trigger here and there, like a small class to do something that I can't just quite achieve with Flow, then that just opens up so many more possibilities. And just understanding what the difference of what you can do declaratively and what you need to do programmatically, that also, that is really important on when you're designing anything, when you're considering what you're going to build. So definitely, right, don't let that put you off. It is hard. To me, it's still the hardest one that I've done, but it's the one that definitely added more value. It's the one that I've learned the most from. And I kind of enjoyed the process, because it is hard and it's a new skill, but it's kind of like learning a new language, and it's not all or nothing, it's not either you become this developer or you don't know anything at all about code. You can know some basics, you'd be very helpful to be able to, I find sometimes just run a SQL query when I want to get, opportunity product IDs for specific opportunities that meet the specific criteria that I couldn't get from report. It's just little things that just knowing how to do that is actually not hard at all. Then that opens up this whole spectrum of possibilities. So don't let that one put you off. And you've got to do that if you want either of the architect certifications, right? Either if you want to become an application architect or a system architect, you need on both of those paths. So do that one, just tackle it. And you won't regret it. It's good. Yeah. You will benefit from it. You will learn loads of important skills, I think, or at least I found that I did. And then, so there's two paths, right? So I'm qualified as I'm a certified application architect. So I've got the platform developer one, and then you have the ad builder. Now, to be completely honest with you, I did my administrator, advanced admin, Sales Cloud Consultant, and App Builder, I think, all within a few weeks of each other, just because I found so much of them overlapped. And especially for me, because by the time I started doing the certification, I think I started doing them like maybe 2.5 years ago. I did the platform developer ones, and I did those 4 almost like together, because I already had all that knowledge from being working on the platform for about 5 years. So again, if you've got a lot of practice, then those are a bit easier. Not that they're easy, but if you have a lot of experience and hands-on action on Salesforce, then they are a bit easier than the others. So I did those. I can't remember exactly what was necessarily in the app builder, but you're going to learn how to build things on Salesforce. The cloud of it, so there's no coding there at all. It's like, how do you create a nice lightning pages that it's engaging for your users, and perhaps it's got some components that only the support team can see, or some components that only the sales team can see, or a component that only pops up if that record meets a certain criteria, and so on. So you learn some nice handy tools of how to make Salesforce irrelevant for your users. And then you get into the designer ones, and I put them off for a while because, again, it's got this special title, so it just sounds a bit fancier. It's like, oh, it's a designer. Like, what's like design? And it's actually, like, design is just you're probably designing solutions all the time. It's just not putting them on the paper or labeling them that. If someone asks you to come up with a solution for a problem, and you say, oh, we've got to create this workflow to do this thing, it's going to update this field, and it's going to send this email alert, and blah, blah, blah. You just designed a solution, you just didn't put that into paper. So that's the other thing an architect has to do, is like document everything. But it's not hard. The harder part is knowing what to do or figuring out how to do. So definitely don't let the designer title of the certification put you off. But they do go more in depth than the other ones. So the first one, or not, but I took them in this order. I did first the data management designer, and that one goes on everything data related. So data governance, so who's going to be responsible for the data that's in your org? What if you create this field that's meant to be used for a specific thing, and you start to rely on that data, but then no one is keeping that data up to date? Then you're going to run into issues, because you now rely on data that is not accurate or it's very outdated, and you need to have some governance around that. So who's going to be doing that? Who is responsible for that? Who's owning that data? And then how to keep your system running. So what if you've got an object that's got hundreds of thousands of records? How do you make sure that your reports are still loading on time, rather than erroring out? What if you have a visual page that's got a query in the background? How do you make sure that that page doesn't break because you've got too much data? So really anything data related.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is the sharing and visibility designer. And that's all about security inside Salesforce. So profiles and sharing rules and sharing sets, because what if you need to share your records with a community user, not just your internal users, and so on. And how do you share your records with a subset of people, so like public groups? And how do you share something, yeah, again, it could have a security around the object level, but also a field level. And what's the difference between that and actually, so someone can see your opportunities, but which opportunities can they see? So are you going to have, is it going to be broken down by territory, or can everyone see everything, and so on? So anything related to that security inside the platform. And then it has a small section on like how do you actually grant access using Apex as well if you need to, and so on. So that's the application side of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And those are, I found those certifications really nice to study, because the material they provide in Trailhead is really good. There's quite a lot to read through, but it's not a heavy reading, so it's all understandable, and you're going to find out they're going to learn so much about Salesforce and things you never knew existed. What if you need to load millions of records into your Salesforce? As a customer is implementing it for the first time and they're retiring an old system, and you've got to move all that data into Salesforce, then how do you make sure that that data loads as smoothly as possible? So you're going to just learn loads of techniques for those kinds of scenario. It's actually quite interesting. And some things you might have come across with and you're going to wish you knew those sooner, and some of them is like, oh damn it, I've never had a chance to work with this. But as one of the things of why I thought it was time for me to move on from Wandera is because I want to see other scenarios. I want different challenges. I want to see how the industries deal with this, rather than being kind of more or less same but different. I want now something very different. And then on the other side of the pyramid, if you want to become a system architect, you have the platform developer one. Then you have your development and deployment lifecycle designer. I've got that one as well, so I can talk about that one. So it's just, when I was a solo admin, I just basically moved things between my sandboxes via change sets. But what are the other ways that you can move your changes? Or what if you're working with loads of developers and you've got a team of the developers working for you, but each of them is working on a different feature? Then how do you move those changes into production? And what if something that one does clashes with something that someone else has done, and you can't wait until that's in production to find out? So you've got to have a sandbox strategy of all these environments, and you start with your development one, and then you kind of start merging them so that you run specific tests through different stages of your development life cycle. That's basically what it means. So until you get to hopefully a sandbox with all of your data where you can simulate running things as they would in production. And once you pass all those tests, ideally you've tested your integrations as well. So if your Salesforce communicates with other systems, how will those changes impact those integrations, if at all? Then once everything's running smoothly, then you can deploy that to production. So, and what are the ways that you can actually run that deployment, and so on. And then you get into more in depth of how can you actually automate that cycle, rather than you having to go and authorize every little step of the way. You could just have a set of tests that they run automatically, and if all of them passes, then you're allowed then automatically push that into the next environment, to the next stage, and so on. we definitely don't have that at the moment, but it sounds wonderful.
Well, you'll get, certainly with your new role, you're going to get that broad experience, aren't you? And I think,
Yeah,
yeah, it's really, I mean, I get excited thinking, oh, I'm gonna, gonna learn, and I suppose advance on it, because a lot of what you've spoken about, we learn security during the admin cert, for example, and we, it always, you get different scenarios and you learn about visibility, and I think it's all just enhancing that knowledge, isn't it, really, and
yeah,
adding in other perspectives and other possibilities, like you say, you didn't know about. So it's it's all really added value things, and something that I've always taken away from people that talk about architects is it's having some experience under your belt. But then I think it's important, to reflect on what you've mentioned around, being in an environment where then, once you've learned it, to be able to sort of experience it firsthand is obviously a great sort of combination, to consolidate your knowledge, for
yeah,
sure.
for sure.
So when you went to, so we met when we were out in Dreamforce, didn't we? And you'd been on a boot camp. Was it a boot trail? Was it the Trailhead boot
Yeah,
camp for?
I did the system architect boot camp there.
So what did you think of
So
that? Was that something that you think would,
amazing,
yeah, would really be really good for people?
amazing. I can't. Yeah, it was the best thing. Um, to me, it was like 5 times better than actual Dreamforce because the knowledge that I gained from that, like I would not learn in 10 Dreamforces combined. Um, so yeah, that bootcamp is focused only on the integration designer kind of certifications and on the identity designer certification. So, but not actually, I say on the certifications, it wasn't necessarily focused on the certifications at all, which is why I haven't done them yet either. But it was about the like the whole, so like the actual Salesforce architecture, and you're hearing from people that helped them get there and why are things the way that they are. And there's no amount of books that you could read to actually get that because it's not written anywhere. You're learning from the people that were part of those discussions and that have worked with several customers to help their issues. So they really know what they're talking about, and when they explain it to you, then everything makes so much sense. So yeah, I can't recommend enough, especially because the identity it's a hard read, like sitting down on your weekend and reading through identity and all types of what flows, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's a bit intense. But actually when you're there and you hearing why things are this way, and it just makes so much sense, and it was just so much easier. And also for me, there's lots about kind of, again, that little bit of validation, because I would say that maybe 2 years ago when I started on this journey, I had a big imposter syndrome because I've only ever worked for one company, and all I know is my little org. I say little, it's very mature, but you know what I mean. But it's different to, your consultants have worked with loads of different customers. So I had that little bit of like, am I actually good enough to actually know enough? And I don't think I've got that anymore, but it was amazing for me to go and sit down with those people. And when you go to a boot camp like that, a lot of people do come from technical backgrounds and realizing that I could hone my own and I could, like design my own system landscape that makes a lot of sense, and have people asking questions and giving feedback and so on. There's so much that you learn from that. So one of the exercises we did is they gave us a scenario, and you had to then go up front and explain it to everyone in 5 minutes what you did, why you think you should do it this way. And then he would pick 3 people to only give you negative feedback, because again, there's
Wow.
one of the architect skills. One, you need to be able to stand up in front of a room of people that know what they're talking about and handle their feedback and be, and stand behind what you did, or actually say, you're right, I need to reconsider this bit, and so on. So it was a lot of knowledge gathered, but also practical skills. And that's just little tips that I would take with me for life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh,
Yeah,
that sounds amazing. I'd love to do that this year, because I'm quite a
yeah,
classroom learner. Like I'm not I'm not great at just sitting down at night and going, oh, I'll do a trailhead. I need a deadline. I need a cert deadline.
Yeah, I'm the
I need to be
same.
in a
Yeah,
classroom. So for me, that's why, I suppose we designed our courses in a way that really produce that accountability as well, because, everybody sort of, we find the trainees that we work with, and similar probably to myself, it's like, right, I need to, I'm being told I need to do this by this date, and I've got an exam booked by this date. Like, that's going to make me do it. Otherwise, it will never get done. So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, it's brilliant that they've, the way that I understand, when I did the trailhead session at, or sorry, the architect session at Dreamforce, it's very much that the architect training is on trailhead at the moment, and they don't normally do like online training around it.
Yeah,
So obviously some of the certs like platform one and things are, that's slightly different, but those other sort of certifications you talked about, the only way to learn is either to go to one of these one-off sort of boot camps that they're running, or do it on trailhead. So yeah, really, really fascinating. Thank you for that insight. I'm conscious of time because we're getting to
yeah.
1:15, so we can ask if anybody's got any questions. I'll just ramble on for another couple of minutes, but
Mm.
yeah, please do put questions in the chat box if you've got in the chat questions area on the GoToWebinar panel if you've got any for Priscilla. And so just while people are thinking about any questions, I suppose for us, that platform one is the one that I think scares people the most, including me, which is why we decided to run a course around that one, because we really wanted to hold people's hand and support them during that journey and give them a mentor, because I think you're right. I always had the perception that doing platform one was about, oh, I'm gonna have to be a coder, I'm gonna have to code, and I think it's just understanding where code has a role is most important, but also if you're working with a developer, and being able to communicate in their language is key.
Yeah,
I imagine, and being able to have those conversations. So it's why we kind of really wanted to build the platform one course. And these are the two courses that we're running at the moment. I think the other key one that you mentioned is around consultancy skills and business analysis skills, project management skills, requirements engineering are all things that we're covering on our consultancy skills course. And one of the things that I've found really important when I've been training my consultancy team, and it very much reflects on this solution architect track, is what we're doing, what we've got on the consultancy skills course is a very detailed business analysis script. So it literally says, right, if you're doing a bit, business analysis for Sales Cloud and you're going to be helping somebody implement Sales Cloud, we've literally gone into what are all the detailed questions you're going to have to ask, because nobody gives you that. You don't get that anywhere.
yeah,
And I've seen my
yeah,
team, my team, no fault of their own, to be honest, unless somebody gives you all the questions you've got to ask, I see them get tripped up. And it's as simple as, a question around, you're working with a client, and it's all very easy to say, oh, well, Outlook integration with Salesforce is free. But, you've got to ask the questions, or what Outlook do you have? Do you have a firewall? Because believe me, we've had a client turn around that said, oh, well, you said it was going to be free, but actually with our firewall, it's going to cost us 2.5 grand. So you didn't tell us that at the beginning. And I'm like, oh
yeah,
God,
yeah,
and it's so little things that can flag you up, like what website platform do they use, and based on that, which is the way that you'd solve that web to lead form solution. There's so many little questions that, having done this for 8 years now, I kind of got to that point where I'm like, right, I'm just going to give people a really, really detailed list of questions to ask as you walk somebody through a sales process. So
yeah. That's amazing, because you're so right. There's so many different challenges, and unless you have dealt with it for the first time, you won't think about it. So
I
yeah, I
know.
can't imagine how valuable that will be for people that are starting now. I wish we
I
had that something when we were starting, Heather. It would have been
I
amazing.
know. Well, that's it. I've gone on all these
Life
different
lessons we had to
courses.
learn the hard way.
Exactly. Well, I've gone on all the consultancy courses, and I've done the business analysis courses, and requirements engineering, but they're all generic, and they're all about the product. They don't tell you how to go about actually doing a live BA with sales. Like, these are all the questions you need to ask from start to finish. I just think, gosh, if I can just help people not have the same problems I had by, you know, giving them those detailed questions, then everything would be so much easier. So we've got some questions now after I've sort of just talked about that for a little bit. So Priscilla, how do you make yourself stand out for a first role after the Salesforce Supermums training and no tech background? Okay, so we can talk a little bit about Supermums. So, and then we got another one from Kashmira. So, hi Priscilla, sorry joined in late, but did you start your Salesforce journey being an admin? Okay, so so Divya, question one, how do you make your stand out for this first role after Salesforce Supermums and no tech background? So I'll just answer, and then Priscilla can add her bit in. So we've got, just to reference, we've got the employability module where I did a webinar session on how to stand out and how to build your CV. So maybe worth just checking in on that if you haven't already. But Priscilla, would you have any additional advice that you could give there?
Yeah, so again, I literally would not have realized all those things that I know now if I hadn't started going to those community events. And by attending, you're not only learning a lot, but you're also networking, you know. And it's not, I didn't go there with the idea, oh, I must network, but you're naturally going to meet people because they're so friendly and it's so lovely, and it's such a supportive community that you're going to make contacts and you're going to figure out, it's like, oh, my company is hiring for that. And there's always someone hiring for something, they're always advertising it. So it's understanding, you could talk to these people to figure out what they're after, you know, and do your skills match it? And if they don't, what do you need to do to get there? And just having that, you know, access to people that you can ask those questions, then that's amazing. And they sometimes do a mentorship program where they will pair you up with someone that has a lot more experience. So I've got two mentees at the moment that I got through the London user group. So there's just a good way of just having access to people. But again, the Supermums is amazing because you guys have an amazing network within yourselves. So just talk to people and ask them what they did, what worked for them and what didn't work for them. You know, I think a standout CV is key. And again, trying to get those hand-on experience, because it's one thing reading about it, but it's something different actually digging into and actually doing yourself, because that's the only way you're going to kind of like cement that knowledge. So as Heather says, like when you guys get the opportunity to get paired up with a consultant and work on your first project, that's really, you know, make sure that you translate all of that in your CV to show like, hey, I do have those skills, I can add value. And you sell yourself, you are selling yourself in an interview. So don't be shy. I think as women, especially when we're starting a new career, especially a career in tech, we tend to sometimes not come across confident enough. Just remember, like, Salesforce is a tight market. Like, there's so many people that need Salesforce administrators, and sometimes there aren't enough administrators out there, so they need you as much as you need them. So keep that in mind as well, and really sell yourself, because it doesn't matter which background you came for, you think your own way, your own person, you're going to have your own ideas, and you can add a lot of value to your business. So just make sure you have that confidence when you walk into anywhere.
Absolutely. And those transferable skills that you've talked about today in your role, Priscilla, a lot of them are communication, facilitation, you know, project management, or sort of researching what people's needs are. It's a lot of softer skills. I think, you know, people assume you need tech skills, but I would say most of the CVs that have ever landed on my desk of admins don't have a tech background. You know, they've all become accidental admins some way or other, or chosen to change career.
Exactly, because the technical skills, they're fairly easy to learn. What you can't teach someone is those soft skills, people that can communicate, you know, that can go into a room and explain their ideas and convince people, you know.
Absolutely. So Zainab's asking, which search should she do after the admin search where it feels like a natural progression and not completely new? I've kind of got my feeling around that. What would your advice be, Priscilla?
I think it should be the app builder. I think it's a natural progression. And then maybe the Sales Cloud Consultant, because what's the point of knowing all of that if you can't actually put that into practice? So I think the consultant one is more like based on real life scenarios, and how do you apply that knowledge that you already have.
Yeah, that's a really good idea because you learn the basics of Sales Cloud and Service Cloud within the admin. So they're both products you've got an understanding of and actually cover quite a bit, aren't they? So, and you're
Yeah,
right, it's, going back to that point about the consultancy process is, if you've got to, it's that entrenching, okay, well, I've got this knowledge about how to do a workflow, but how does that then apply in a real work environment and a product? And so it makes sense to apply it in that way, doesn't it? Um,
yeah.
yeah, no,
That's how I
absolutely.
feel anyway. But do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, app builder, or we've seen people do advanced admin. Um,
Yeah,
but I think, you're right around the products. I think it just depends on which route you fancy going,
yeah,
really. Because there's no, yeah, it's all those that surround the admin, isn't it? It's advanced admin, app builder, sales cloud, or service cloud, which would be the
yeah,
natural ones to kind of focus on first in no
yeah,
particular order.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree.
So Permjit's asking about there are a variety of sectors using Salesforce. Would you advise trying to get work experience in a variety of sectors and understanding their Salesforce use cases, or just sticking to one sector for career progression? So that's an interesting one.
That is interesting. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I think you've got to find what appeals to you. Because if you're really specialized in a certain sector, then you can add a lot of value to that sector because you're going to have a lot of experience doing that. That not necessarily those people will have that amount of in-depth knowledge. But then if you're going to be more well-rounded, then it's worth doing different things, So, I mean, that is the reason why I'm changing us, because I think I've learned as much as I could do within the high tech space or SaaS or or a startup. I feel like I think I got as much out of that as I could, and now I'm ready for a different challenge. So there's also that you could work in a sector for one and get a bit bored and think, I need something different, and you start branching out. But I think those, I don't, I wouldn't necessarily plan that very strictly. I think I would just kind of see what you feel, because how you feel right now might be different to how you feel in 2 years when you're ready to change roles, so I don't think there's a lot of point in planning and being too strict about that. I would say it's such a
Yeah,
dynamic market, the product's changing all the time. You just don't know.
yeah, that's true. And it's related to products, isn't it? Because there's different perspectives here. You've kind of got industry. So, you could have Sales Cloud, but you could do Sales Cloud in a range of industries, right? But you're
Yeah,
focusing on that solution. Or you could say, well, I know an industry really well, but I'm going to learn the range of products in that industry because you understand the
yeah,
industry. So I think
yeah,
it depends on, we encourage the super mums to kind of focus on, let's not try everything new at once.
yeah.
Because then you're
Oh, for
like,
sure.
oh, so if we can try and suggest to the trainees, we sort of say, look, focus on an industry or a skill. So some people have come from sales backgrounds. It doesn't really matter what industry they're in, but they understand sales
Yeah,
processes.
yeah,
Focus on a role that's going to really, align with something you understand well, like sales or, the industry that you've worked in before, whether it's hospitality or whatever it is. And then a product, because at least then you've got something that feels comfortable, but you're learning all the Salesforce stuff alongside it. So the consultants that I hire who've been super mums and super dads as well, I've sort of said, well, you focus on, David, who works for us, had a background in grant management where he was previously, and he was one of our clients before he joined us. And I said, right, you're now our go-to grant management person because I know you know grant management back to front and people trust you with that. But he's now learned Salesforce and how to really flex it for grant management and worked on one of our sort of 70k projects around grant management. So now he's sort of done the Rolls Royce grant management solution. He feels like he can, he's in a space where he can tackle like a whole range of grant management foundation solutions now because he's really had the opportunity to understand it. So that would be my kind of pennyworth on it's feeling
yeah,
where you feel comfortable and then setting yourself the challenge when you feel right
exactly.
for it, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree, because it's what it said, find something that works for you, not focus on it, learn that, but don't try to think about, oh, this is what I want to be doing in 5-10 years time, because it could completely change. So yeah, start somewhere, and as I said at the beginning, it's endless, and the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. Do you know what I mean? So like, you could learn as much as you can about Sales Cloud and Service Cloud, and then suddenly you realize you know nothing about CPQ or the Marketing Cloud, and it's like you can't tackle everything. And don't even get me started on Einstein, because that's the
It's too much.
possibilities with that are endless.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean,
Yeah.
that's a great area to learn now, because it's gonna, and they in Salesforce are quite Tableau. There's so much you can do with Einstein. I can't, yeah, like that's a great area to focus if you've got an interest. But if that's not your kind of predisposition, then don't force yourself to go into something. You know, find what you like or find what you know, and use that as a starting point, and just see how it goes from there. You will know. You would naturally want to learn more about one thing or a different thing, or change industries or whatever.
Yeah, well, we might have 30 odd years until we retire, right? Depending on what age we are now, where we're
Let's not
starting.
talk about
You know,
that.
people might still be learning Salesforce Trailhead like age 100, you know, to keep their brain
Yeah.
fresh. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I think that's what's so important about this. And it's certainly why, you know, people, it's what I look for in the people that I hire is, you know, they're relishing the opportunity to learn this stuff, and they're really happy that actually for the next 20 years they're not going to be bored and they're
Yeah.
not going to stop learning, because whatever
Yeah.
business you're in or whatever product you're doing or whatever, you know, culture of organization you're in, you're always going to have new challenges.
Yeah.
So it's
And if
certainly
you
never
don't like
boring.
change, yeah, if you don't like change, or if you don't like that continuous learning, then don't go into Salesforce. It changes 3 times a year. So
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, I've always felt a little bit like when they started bringing all the new certs out, because there used to be 4, right, when I started,
oh
and
yeah.
probably, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel a little bit overwhelmed and a bit of pressure of like, there's all these certs to learn. And I think it's just about being focused on, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do right now. This year, I'm going to focus on this, or the next couple of years, I'm going to focus on this. And then, you know, deciding when you're ready. So, yeah, I just think it's you know, it's been really great to hear your journey. You know, Kashmir, you just asked about you know, Priscilla did start, you know, from being a lawyer in Brazil to kind of then, you know, being that central admin and learning your BA skills to be a solution architect. It really gives me confidence that I'm like, right, yeah, I can do this, it's fine.
Of course you can, Heather.
I know, that imposter syndrome, isn't it? You know, I've been doing
Yeah,
this for years now, I'm
exactly.
still doing this, but I think that's why it's been really good to kind of open that up for people today, just explore a little bit more about it. So thank you for spending your Tuesday evening inspiring and encouraging other people. And there will be a recording of the webinar that will come out to you all afterwards. So thank you again. Thank you, Priscilla. Have a good evening,
Yeah, my
everybody.
pleasure.
And we'll see you soon at the next community event, no doubt.
Yeah, hopefully be there. I'll be there. Hope you're there too.
Awesome.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone. Thanks, Bridget. Take care. Bye. Bye.